You asked me the question, if I could buy black ash, the starting material, would I do it?
One of my maples fell down, huh?
The answer would be absolutely not, because, you know, if I did, it wouldn't be all mine. I cut a black ash, I look at it and go, I'm going to make a pack basket out of this tree. It's a wonderful feeling, you know, when you're done, you know, this is a tree. It's a beautiful thing when you can go out in the woods, pick the tree you want, cut it down, pound out the splints, make every bit of this out of a tree. My grandfather was a trapper, and pretty well known, and people always talked about him, and I kind of wanted to be like him. And so, you know, I started exploring what trapping was all about when I was pretty young, and I started at a very early age, and used to go across the Lake Algonquin in a little rowboat, trapping muskrat up on the upper end in the marsh. And you know, for a young boy, it was a little hair-raising at times, the water. You know, you might have a pretty good clip on the water from the wind and maybe some rain. And, you know, I'd leave the house at 4:30. It was dark. Go all the way across the lake in the dark. And I had a man that was a mason in town who lived on the other side of the lake, well up almost to the marsh. And he found out what I was doing. He asked me when he saw me one morning coming back. And he said, well, I'll turn my light on here and you'll have something to go by. Well, that was a wonderful thing. I mean, I could get in the boat and start across the water, and, you know, you really have no direction except I kind of knew where I was headed. And on many nights it was pretty dark. Other nights you had a little bit of moonlight, but you still, you know, you're fighting the chop of the water. And I'd look over my shoulder and his light would guide me, and I'd keep working towards it until I got over along that shore, and then I could go right up the shore and into the marsh. And he was really a nice guy. He would, when I'd go by, he'd put his thumb up and say, well, what do you got, you know? And I would hold up whatever I had. And then one day I caught a mink, and he got excited and came right out and came down the dock and congratulated me and all that. And I realized right away that my mom was really excited about me trapping, and I'd come home with critters and I'd get a lot of praise for it. And I think that kind of spurred me along as a kid, you know. You know, trapping was really the catalyst of everything else in the woods. You know, when I look back, I realized that all the really, really good woodsmen that I've known in my life were all trappers. So all the baskets are made out of black ash, and you know, black ash looks similar to a white ash. A lot of guys know what a white ash looks like, a deeply fissured pattern bark. In black ash, you can see the pattern is similar to a white ash, but it's not as uniform. It's a little more mottled as it goes up. And a white ash tree grows with more of a what they call a deliquescent crown, which means the branches go up and they go off at a sharp angle toward the sky. And they, you know, you have a pretty good bowl like this one does, and then it branches off. But the black ash, if you look up at the crown of the tree, the branches are nearly 90 degrees off the stalk. Very dark in color and very angular. And that's a dead giveaway that it's black ash. And black ash has got to have its feet wet. Look at the, you know, you got a brook right here. This is all swampy and wet in the summertime. This is a beautiful specimen. The properties in black ash are far better for basket making than the white ash. It tends to bend better when you soak it. You don't have to heat it, you know. Some people think, oh, you got to steam it or whatever. No, you just soak it with cold water, and it's very pliable after it's been soaking for a few hours, and they make a really nice basket. So that's a material that we use. This is an increment bore. And what we do with this is we're going to get a core sample of the tree. You know, if you're looking for a tree that will be used for the standards, which are the uprights in a basket that go all the way around and up the other side, those are thicker in thickness than the weavers that go around the basket. So I use an increment borer, which is a tool that makes a hole. You do it by hand and you work it into the tree and it cuts a core, and then there is a very sharp little slicer that goes into the hole, cuts all the way around and pulls it free, and you can slide it out and look at it. And then you can count the annual rings and you can see how good the growth was. Now if I'm looking for a tree for standards, I'm looking at the crowns. I want one that owns the canopy, you know, that is dominating the canopy. That means that it's absorbing the sunlight and the nutrients and doing really well, and the growth range would naturally be bigger on a tree that was really healthy and thriving and dominating the site it's on. Now if I was looking for one for weavers, I would probably look for a black ash that was nice and straight in the understory of that big one, and try to increment bore that and find one that instead of having rings that were the thickness of a nickel, more like the thickness of a dime. And then that's what you want, is something that would not override the thickness of the standard. You want the weaver to be thinner in thickness. And so that's what you do. You go out with an increment borer, you find ones that you like, and it doesn't mean that it's going to be the same all the way around it, but you can bore into it 2, 3, 4 inches, get an idea of what you're looking at. Look at this. Look at the growth rings on that tree. Yeah, that's really good. I'm going to save that core sample and put it right in the pocket of the weather wool vest and zip it right in. I've got 3 logs, Cody, that are standards. All 3 of them will be used for the uprights in a basket. I'm really tickled with them. That is about as fine a black ash as you will ever find. You have to peel the bark off of it. Now at certain times of year you can get a spot underneath it and get a lot of it to peel off. Not really readily, not like a cedar or a white pine, but it does facilitate the bark coming off easier if you cut it in May or June when the tree is pouring the sap up. And once you have the bark off, you have to start pounding it. You actually pound the annual rings off of the tree. And you have to get what you call the waxy coating, which is the part right under the bark, and the cambium there. And it's really not useful for basket making, so you have to take that off. And then you're down to the raw ash, and then you have to soak the log in a big vat, and then you have to pound every inch of that log to pop free a piece of wood. And I have a 6-pound maul that I power hacksawed off on either side. Now the head's about 3 pounds. And you polish it really, really well, and then you turn the edges up. You want to hit the ash square, and the only part of it that's hitting is maybe 1.5 inches in the middle. And you want it that way because if you even get a little bit tweaked one way or the other when you're pounding, a sharp edge would actually cut into the ash and ruin the piece that you're trying to pound out. You try to let the mallet do the work for you, otherwise it would kill you in a little while. So you meticulously go around and hit it very squarely. And if you're trying to get a strip off, usually I try to take a strip off maybe 2 inches wide, something like that. And so you're hitting it kind of 1, 2, 3 this way, and then you do that back and forth, all the way down the full length of the log, and you have to pound every inch of it. And it'll start to lift up, and after maybe you've pounded on 1 foot or 18 inches of it, you get a bar onto it and see how am I doing here. And then it'll let you know right away. If the bar doesn't let it pop right up, then you have to pound it more. So you pound more, and then you go the full length of the log, and then you work your bar under it and see how you're doing. And usually, maybe you'll get another foot, and you go, oh, going good, and then that needs to be pounded more. And then you pound it 4 or 5 more times, continue with your bar until you get a strip off. And then you continue to go around the log and pound and pound and pound. And I wouldn't even venture a guess at how many times you raise and lower a hammer to pound out a log. Each annual ring comes off one at a time. Now, sometimes, in particular logs, especially when you're doing weavers, because they're a little thinner layers, you'll pound out a layer, and then when you go to the next layer underneath, you got a freebie going. It's coming up pretty good because your pounding actually got to 2 layers. And so you can maybe take a little more material off more quickly. Usually with a standard log, you pound every single layer. It's a lot of work. But, after a while, you really gravitate towards logs that don't have any imperfections, and maybe the bowl went up and moved a little. Maybe it had a branch that fell off when it was young but left kind of a little bit of a bump out. You want the material to be able to flatten out well and be able to be worked and cut and dressed and without it rippling, and then it would cause maybe a weaver to be wider in one place and narrower in another and whatever. So, there's quite a process to coming up with the raw material to start a basket. Now, in the process of collecting the logs for the uprights and the weavers, you also have to keep in mind that you're building rims for this, and they're out of black ash also. And you can see the beautiful ash color on the underside. That'll clean up, and that log, that's pretty much the color of it when it is clean. See, there's your upright in the basket. Perfect thickness, really nice for a big, heavy basket, not a child's basket or even a woman's basket. A little thick for that, but perfect for a big man's basket. That is very unusual. That's a shingle roof. Wow. You can buy pack baskets. When I was a kid, you could buy them they were made out of, some of them were made out of ash, but not pounded out ash. They were splints that they ran through, a board basically that they cut pieces off of. And, they went around it, and the weavers were about that tall, but they formed a pack basket, and when they were done, and it was functional, but it was not a thing of beauty. And I remember going down, I believe I was about, I would say maybe 12 or 13, and I had a fair amount of fur for a kid, maybe 20 muskrat, and maybe a couple fox and some coons and stuff. But they had a fur buyer coming to O.L. Butcher's. O.L. Butcher was a very famous trapper. He lived in Shushan, New York, and he had a trapping supply place, and he invited a fur buyer to come, and you could go down and sell your fur there. And, it worked out for everybody because, a trapper sells his fur, he's in a trapping supply store, and then you start saying, I'd like to get that, and I'd like to get that, and whatever. And he had pack baskets in there that were made by Indians, and to me they were an absolute thing of beauty. The weavers were maybe 5/8 of an inch, but they were made out of black ash, and they had a whole different look to them. They were very nicely done, and they had rims on them like these, and I thought, wow, those are really nice. And if you can imagine, a decent sized one was $8 or $10. They had prices written on them in pencil, $8, $10. And I remember thinking, boy, I need traps more than I need a new pack basket, but one of these days I'm going to get one of those because they were really nice. And I think that kind of really spurred me on to really evaluate when I would see pack baskets to see what they were, This is a piece of raw ash pounded off the log, and I'm going to make weavers out of it. And I make up these blocks with utility blades, and they're locked in, and then you place it on here. So you're going to weave this, over, under, and make a mat. Now these standards are laying flat on a table. They just extend out in all 4 directions. So it looks like a big cross when you're putting it together. Now I've marked the center of each one with a pencil mark. You just measure them and put a pencil mark in the middle. That way when you're sliding them through and together, you get to the center one, you put the center marks in line all the way, so that as you slide through, each one is centered on these marks. That way you have an equal amount of material on all 4 sides when you start to turn the basket up. Now, when it's laying flat, the thing you have to understand is you want an odd number of standards when you build a basket, so that when you weave around, you don't come back to the last one. It's got to go under, it can't go over. And if you're an even number, it doesn't work. So if you took an odd number in both directions, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. That's an odd number, but you're doubling it because there's 2 sides to both of these. 15 and 15 is 30. So you need an odd number. If you have an even number, say there was 16, double it, 32. So you have to weave this mat and then make 1 into 2. So if you look very carefully here, this standard in the center, always in the middle of the back, because I splay the front of my basket out, want it to bulb out and then move back in. It starts out a little wider, but it's a big piece of material, and I hand pick it ahead of time. And when I get to here, it widens out, it flares out, and is a piece about that wide. And then right here where the end of that mat is, I split this all the way down to about here, and then I flare it out a little bit so I have room, and then bring it to a point. And now this even number becomes an odd number because this has become 2. Okay. It also gave me more room right here on the front to splay that out and ball it out. So that's where that extra one comes in. Okay. Now, when you build this basket, it's flat on the table, and you have 9 going out in that direction, 9 going straight out behind me, 6 on either side, flat. Looks like a big cross. You start weaving it with it flat, just like that. And you would start in a rear corner, leave about a 3-inch tail, and kind of fold that inside. And then, because you pick, this would be the outside of the basket, that would what would be facing up towards you. And then you'd go right around it, and you would do about 5 courses of weavers on the flat. Once those are there, then you have something that you can make shape of the bottom and the sides and have some kind of uniformity to hold the basket when you start to change it. So once 5 courses are down on the flat, then I say, okay, this is my front. That I don't really want to bend much. I just want to flex it a little bit. Here, here, and here, I want to bend it more. Now on the sides, not quite as much as the back. This pretty much 90 degree, okay? Once you do that, now you have these floppy standards going off in every direction. I generally take another basket that's already made, and I tuck all of them together, bring them up to the middle, and shove them inside the basket. Just laying on the table. It would look something like this. There'd be another basket laying here. I'd gather all these together and just shove them in the end of it. Kind of hold them in place while I work on it, because what has to happen here is now what you've done on the flat is a little bit loose. So you have to pull it down, you have to rework these, and sometimes you have to start on the bottom and just keep working your way all the way around, tightening them, because it's a shorter distance once you have this gathered up. And then once you have 5 courses in, it kind of snugged up and have the shape about what you want, then you can pull that basket off. And the first 10, 12 courses, a little unruly because they want to splay out. And then you just have to go by feel. Try to work these sides up evenly. I always let this rise naturally from here to try to get that. And then as you're doing this, you're splaying these corners, you're pushing them towards these corners. And then as you work your way up, you're pushing this one towards that one and trying to create shape and still have uniformity. So there's a bit of a trick to it. It takes some experience doing it. You know, these are annual rings off of a tree. You have a whole pile of the material that you start from, and the material that you start from may be different thicknesses, and you want to try to match the best you can. Now, it's not necessary that they're all identical, but you want to try to have. You don't want 3 or 4 standards mixed in that are over an eighth of an inch thick, and then try to match them up with ones that are half that. And if you have some variation, the ones that would be the thickest, you would not orient toward where a corner would be on a basket if you can help it. And because they become a little bit unruly, and you want to be able to shape and mold corners as you go, and the thinner it is, the more pliable it is. And so, you know, I prefer to not have super thick standards, and I prefer to try to match them the best I can. I don't necessarily pay a lot of attention to color, although you may get all one color of a beautiful ash and be able to make several baskets out of what you harvested out of that one tree. And it may be a very unique color. And I have a couple baskets here that were made from the same tree. This one I've carried this all over the woods. This is my own basket. I made it. It's got the date on it. I believe I made this in 1997. I love it. But it was made out of the same tree. And you can see the thing has an absolutely beautiful golden tone to it. And this one did too. And there's no variations in the color of the weavers because they all came from that same tree. Now you'll notice this probably looks all light in color to you. But if you look very carefully, light, light, dark, light, light, dark. There's a mixture of it because ash has a variation in coloration as you go along. This one I just built, you and I put together, Cody. You can see it as this basket ages, it'll all blend together, and you won't see that as much. But you can see there's different colors and different courses as you go along, and it adds to it. It's a thing of beauty. It's part of what you're building. You know, I had a good friend. His name was Jack Leadley, and Jack was I consider him a master craftsman. He built rustic furniture. He made pack baskets, and he was a woodsman. And we were good friends. And Jack was aging, and he didn't have quite as much time as he used to trap. And I was successful, and we were good friends. And he would say to me, "Hey, bring me pictures, you know, come up to the shop and visit me and bring pictures of your catches and bucks you're killing and all that kind of stuff. And I'll kind of live vicariously through you while I'm aging." And I said, "Yeah, that would be great, Jack." So that's what I did. And we were very good friends. And I remember he was doing a demonstration down here at our old homestay presentation in the community hall. And I said to him, we were visiting in there, and I said, "One of these days, Jack, I'm going to have you make me a pack basket, but not now. I can't afford to get one." But I said, when I can, I'm going to have you make me one. And he said, "Yeah, I'd love to do that." And about then, my wife came up with a little stroller, and, you know, she had 2 little ones, one in the stroller and the other one tagging along in her hand. And he smiled at me and he said, "Now I know why you can't afford to buy a pack basket. You're too busy buying babies." And we both laughed, and I said, "Yeah, they're definitely worth it." And so we left it at that. And we visited a while longer. I went home, and I was working the ranger job at the time. And I came home maybe like 2 weeks after that, and Lori kind of met me out in the yard and said, "You're just not going to believe what Jack Leadley dropped here today." And he dropped this pack basket that he'd made for me. And it just said, "To my buddy Jim Abbott, happy trails." And I thought, wow, what a gift, what a beautiful thing. So it wasn't much longer after that. I was up visiting him, talking, and he mentioned that he would like to apprentice me. He said, I really would like, if you'd spend the time with me, he said, I want to pass this on to somebody. And he said, I'd like to pass it on to you. And I said, you know what, Jack, I'll make the time. And so at some point in the early 90s, I started spending some time with him, and he taught me the trade of building pack baskets. And he was a phenomenal man. He was the kind of a guy that he shared everything with you. And, oftentimes you'll have a craftsman that, doesn't want to share that information, but he was so generous with his time and his knowledge, and was really amazing to see. And it was much more than that. When I started making baskets and got good at them, he would actually heap praise on me. And when I was there, like he'd do a day where he would have people come. He had a sugar bush and he had the pack basket shop, and he would run tours, and they were snowshoe trips. They'd go out in the sugar bush, and he'd show them about maple syrup stuff, and he would call me and say, hey, that day's coming. You got to come up, bring what you're working on, bring some baskets and whatever, and come up and man the shop for me. And I'll be doing the sugaring, and you can talk about the pack baskets. And then sometimes he'd come in, and I'd have a group of people there, and he's heaping praise on me and saying, look at the beautiful work he does, and he's the master, And that was the way Jack was, He's just a fantastic man, and he had a lot of knowledge, little nuances of the craft that, it's really an art that he was willing to share. And as I made baskets, he'd say, bring them all up before you sell them, and we'll go over it and whatever. And I remember my second basket, he looked at it and said, you got to be joking me. He said, you're a natural, But it's that kind of encouragement that that basket's right over here somewhere. But yeah, it just, and when you have somebody with that much knowledge that's willing to share it, and then is also a great encourager, he kind of spurs you along, and just a wonderful man. Just super generous. He was not just a basket maker. He made this chair I'm sitting in. Fantastic Jack Leadley rocker. And he was always looking for a new thing to create within his art form. He made creels, beautiful fishing creels. He made these rockers. He made all sorts of different types of rustic furniture. And sometimes he'd try something and say, I don't like that one. And, then he'd go on to something different. But, he was the kind of a guy, he loved everything old and from years ago. And he said, you got to see what I've got going. I said, I'm going to build a bark shanty. Years ago, the hunters and trappers would peel the bark off a big red spruce, and oftentimes, they were logging. They were taking the spruce logs for, whatever they were making out of them, lumber and stuff. And some of them were good-sized logs, and they'd peel the bark off, and they had these huge piles of bark sheets, and then they would use them, and they'd build shanties out of them. They'd just use small poles and build a structure, and then they'd cover the whole thing with birch bark, or not birch bark, with spruce bark. And he built this exquisite bark shanty up against a boulder, and the boulder becomes the fire pit, and the smoke goes right up the face of the boulder. And then he built like a wooden chimney over the top, and tarred the joint where the building hit the boulder. And the windows were not glass, the windows were natural rawhide. They had that beautiful yellow glow, and it was a magnificent little place. Probably, I want to say 8 by 10 probably, or thereabouts. And a small bunk on either side. And over the door he had a little, it was a round out of a tree, and he painted beautifully on it. The best lean-to is a poor shelter compared to this bark shanty. It was so true. You have a beautiful fire in there, warm the whole place up, and the heat and the smoke would go right up the face of the boulder and out that wooden chimney above. And But that was the kind of guy he was. He was always being innovative and looking into the past and trying to understand what they did in the past and reproducing it. We talked about how you start a basket and get it going. It's really by feel. You try to match the material and match the shape on both sides as you weave it up. And that's where the art form comes in. And this is the one that we just made. And you try to bring the basket out initially, and then you kind of sweep it in. Same thing on the sides, the back. Pretty straight up and down. That's what you want to try to do, because you're going to have your back against it eventually. It gets worn a lot. It'll be pushed in and take the shape of the man's back that wore it. And sometimes they will tip a little because they heavy weight put in them, and they'll sag a little bit. It's all part of the beauty of what it is. But you want to try to come up with an attractive shape to it. Some guys want a big one with a big wide mouth. I've had guys say, no, I'm going to use it for 330 calibers. I want them to drop right into it, And then you'd adjust it accordingly. You'd have something that had a big wide mouth on it. Other guys, if you're carrying stuff in this, kind of nice to have a smaller top and drop stuff down and push them down into the belly of the basket. Everything stays put down in there. And it gives it a beautiful flair. Yeah, this basket was made for my daughter. I believe it was her 4th birthday. To Heather, Love Daddy, June of '97. Even today, as a 31-year-old, it's one of her treasured belongings. And this is owned by one of the twins, Jim and Tim Harrison. And this is Jim's basket. Beautiful basket. This is Peter Burns. He's another member of the hunting group. These guys are all great hunters and really fine men. Love the woods. And I feel honored to have each one of them own one of my baskets. But this was kind of a nice shape, rounded. Peter is a guide. He's a river guide. I think he still does some fishing guiding too. But he's a fantastic man, and he's been using the basket. I love that. Guys buy these baskets and they use them. This basket was clearly heavily used. I'm going to say it's probably 100 years old. The basket was put up, probably not dried. You can see the weavers were a little thin, so many of them crushed. That's why this. And then the sag, from carrying a lot of heavy weight in it, pushed things down. Some of them broke out and they just disappeared. But it was still functioning, and the bottom's still in it. And it is just a beautiful thing to look at. I often see pack baskets that somebody's taken polyurethane or tung oil or whatever, lacquer, and put over them, figuring that they're going to keep the weather off of them while they're using them. And it's the worst thing you could do to a basket. When you coat them like that, moisture can't get in. And the lack of moisture is death to a pack basket. It has to be able to absorb moisture from the air and then give it off when it's back inside. It keeps all the ash from becoming brittle. And if you seal it up, within 4 or 5 years, you can go boom and break it right out. This basket I made for my younger sister, Debbie. It is number 18, made in '97, July of '97. And obviously it's a woman's basket. It's smaller. It's a beautiful little thing. It's actually very handy. It doesn't have to be a woman's basket. It could be, you know, a basket for a guy who's going to not put a lot of stuff in it. I had a good buddy, a trapper friend of mine, that he bought one of my big baskets. He absolutely loved it. And then he said, Jim, make me one for berry picking. And he gave me the sizes. And I made one that was a little smaller than this, a little narrower too, but a nice little shape to it. And he said, oh my goodness, I love it. He put a liner in it and would fill it with berries when he berry picked. But yeah, this is my sister's. And she brought it up so that it could be part of the presentation. And she said, don't let anybody try to buy it from you. This is the first one I ever made. It's not real good. It's a half harness, which, you know, you notice that a lot of these baskets have a full harness on them, which I really like the look of much better. But these are very functional, and you can see they're copper riveted to the bottom of the basket. They have little feet on them, which, you know, is really nice. Keeps them up off the dirt and whatever. But this is the very first one I ever made. It's marked on the bottom. Adirondack Guide basket, first one, made by Jim Abbott. You know, it's not the prettiest thing in the world. It's the first one I made, but you know, you can see that thing's had some wear and it's in pretty good shape. It's been beat pretty hard and left sitting out in the snow in different places and used hard. This one is number 2. It's a half harness also. And it came out a lot better than number 1. And I had forgotten, my really good buddy Gary Flanagan owns number 2, and I had forgotten that he had 2. I knew he had an early one, but I didn't know it was number 2. And he brought it over. He was good enough to bring me. Most of the basket behind you are owned by a group of guys that are in a hunting camp. There's 11 of them, I believe. There's 12 now, I think. And all of them have one of my pack baskets. And you know, just a great bunch of guys. Gary was the first one to get one, and I think guys saw it, and then somebody wanted it, and then another one, and before you know it, everybody in the hunting camp has got one of my baskets, and they were good enough to let Gary just round a bunch of them up and bring them over here for so you could see some of the baskets. But these are all really good, you know, woodsmen. They're all buck hunters, and they're tremendous individuals too. And very accomplished men in their own right, and also really good hunters. And I feel very privileged to have each one of these guys have one of my baskets, which is, wow, what an honor. But yeah, so most of these are owned by guys in that group.
That must feel good when you actually get to deliver them.
Yeah, you know, and almost without fail, it's just, oh my goodness, I love it, thank you so much. And, you know, it's nice. This particular basket here I had made for twin brother of one of the other guys in this camp, and I had it with me one day. I was at a show in it was an antique show in Indian Lake, and I had a good friend there that sells wares, and he's a very smart guy, and he, you know, knows a lot about antique axes and knives and just a wealth of knowledge. And he's one of these guys that he just shares it with me. We're buddies. And he said, oh no, you know, I need to write this stuff down. And just a wonderful friend. So I walk in with this basket, and Obi goes, where the heck did you get the basket? And I said, it's one of mine. It's for a customer. You know, he goes, what? He goes, you didn't tell me you were a basket maker. I said, oh, Obi, I thought you knew. He goes, no. Let me see that thing. And he grabbed it, and he's just like, oh my goodness. He said, you have any idea how many baskets I've seen in my life? I said, a lot. He said, this is the finest pack basket I've ever had in my hands. Make me one. So I said, okay, I'll get you on the list and make you one. And unfortunately, Obi caught COVID and died. And it was like the following year or two at that particular show, I asked the guys, where's Obi? And they said, he's in the hospital, he's got COVID. A few days later, his son called me and said, I know my dad had a basket on order. He won't be needing it. He passed away. And then he said, but you're going to make me one. So I will. Now what I've done is I've left these 3 standards in the middle. I have already turned down. That allows me a hole, once I have the rim on it, to put the harness through. So those are already turned, and so what happens here is then I run another, the standard, or the weaver I was working on, I bring to this opening, I just go right around behind it and come right back the other way. Now that means that particular weaver, I have to work both sides of it, dress both sides of it so it's clean as a whistle, because what's exposed when you go around back and come back the other way is the back side, okay? So that's what has been done. And then when you get to this side, you use one long enough so that it's going to go around here, go around the back side, and work its way back the other way. And then you taper that. If you look carefully here, this tapers down from a full thickness to about a half a thickness. And then I turn it and go right down in the back side of a standard between the weavers to hold it there. Okay, and that's how the top is finished. Then I run a heavier weight weaver, one that I cut out of a piece of material that would be as heavy as a standard in a basket, but it's the width of a weaver. Okay, that gets weaved along the top here, and it goes right straight over the opening. All right, that becomes what we're going to lash the rim to. And now I'm turning all of these tops down like I did these 3. And if you look carefully, this is every other one, just like the basket is being weaved. And if the weaver is over top of the standard, then this piece would be folded out and tucked on the outside. The next one folds over the weaver to the inside and is tucked on the inside. So they're going to look like this. Some of these are thin enough that I will not split them. They'll go right down in. But these heavier ones, they will all get writhed apart and turned so that they can go down in. Okay? That's the process. And the rim is black ash. You split it or writhe it out from a log, and you work it down as small as you can by splitting it. Now maybe you have 2 pieces that are this big, and you can go, okay, I'll put those on my shaving horse, and I'll get a draw knife out, and I'll make the 2 rims out of those 2 pieces that I writhed out.
How would you describe Jim Abbott?
Oh boy. Well, he was one time described by a writer in an article as a Renaissance woodsman, and that really fits who he is. He does things kind of the old-fashioned way. He doesn't want, the plastic stock on his guns. It's got to be wood with a nice grain. He traps, he hunts, he fishes, he just, he does it all. He loves anything working with his hands, with doing the woodwork and the baskets and all of that. And he loves to be in the woods. He is a conservationist. He believes in wise use. He loves the animals, but, he's also willing to hunt, and he enjoys every bit of the process of it. He cuts the meat himself. He doesn't take it to a butcher. He is hands-on. And he's a perfectionist in everything he does.
You want it to flex evenly around the rim. Being very cautious in my midsection because I'm wearing this beautiful leather wool vest.
He's kind of the go-to person in the area if people have questions about the woods. And he loves to teach. He teaches trapper training. He teaches hunter safety classes. And he teaches a boys brigade group with the young kids locally. So that's a lot of who he is. And he obviously loves to talk about whatever it is he's passionate about, which is anything to do with the woods. You hear people talking about people being a jack of all trades, but he's not, because he's good at everything he does. He doesn't do anything that he's not going to do well. And a woodsman is one of the terms I often think of when I think of him, but he's also a craftsman. And even in the building of the homes, he's a craftsman in that as well, not just a contractor. And he's a man of God. Everything he does, he spends time in the Word of God every day. The way he views the world, the way he views our environment and how we interact with it, all of that is based on who he is and his relationship with God. And he's a dad. He's a good friend to many. I don't know many people he doesn't refer to him as my good friend, because that's the way he views people. He teaches people whenever he can. People come to the house and want to know how to do this, or younger men will be like, can you take me with you? Can you show me how to do this? And he always takes the time to do it, because that's just who he is, and he loves it. He loves sharing the knowledge that he has gained over the years.
Whose hunting camp is that?
That is Ole DeMunn's. He's the old trapper.
Yeah.
Lived on the windfall that I got the pictures of. He's the tall guy in the pictures with the bucks. He was quite the fella. Very famous.
I said, maybe that's a buck. It was walking straight away up a hill. And I reached straight in my jacket. I had a grunt tube with me. And I grunted at it. And it turned right around, and as it came down the hill, I realized it's a big doe, But she came right down to me. Who you choose as a partner in life is such an important thing. And it makes such a difference in who you become. And, my wife Lori has just been such a fantastic influence, because, we've been married. This fall will be 40 years. And Lori is she's a beautiful woman and just a wonderful wife. And, you find out what people are like, and you find out what love truly is under adversity. And I've been through a serious back surgery that you go in, think you're going to be in 3 or 4 days, and it ends up 2 days of surgery that really was extensive, and I ended up in a hospital a month. Come home with a walker, barely put one foot in front of the other, and Lori was just beside me every moment, every step of the way. And then cancer and cancer treatment, and I wouldn't be the same person without her. She's more than half of me, and she's definitely the better half. Maybe the better 2/3 or whatever, but yeah, she's a wonderful woman. There goes the pileated. Fantastic. What what a place God has allowed us to live. Every day's a gift, Cody.
Yeah.
As you get older, you figure that out. You know, when we're young, we feel like we're invincible. When we get old, we realize that, yeah, every day is a gift for sure. Yep. This is my basket. It's kind of my baby. It does not live in the trapping shed. It lives in the house. So I bring it in when I'm done with it. If it's covered with something, I wipe it down, clean it down right away, and it lives right over there. And if it's winter time or whatever, it has a wood stove that kind of dries it out. And, so yes, I use it hard, but I also baby it a bit too, because they become like a companion, you know. There's something that they're special. And that thing's been all over the place with me. You know, we're not building a factory thing. We're building a piece of art, and every piece of wood and everything you work with is a little bit different. So you're always working it to your advantage to try to make the basket nicer, stand better, work better, function better. And this particular basket, it is made for another member of that club. He's a dear friend of mine. He just became a member of the club, and he said, I got to have one, you know. So he's a really a neat guy. He's a very intelligent man. He's retired now, but he's a good buck hunter and a good fisherman. But beyond that, he's a wonderful man. I've got a gentle, humble spirit about him, and he was like excited to get one of my baskets, and I'm honored to have him have one. So I'll take it to him when he's done and say, if that's the one you want, it's yours. Some people like the visual look of the back of the pack having no harness on it. They like to look at the weave of the basket. This is my favorite type. I really like a full harness. I think that it adds a lot to the look of the basket, and this is what I almost always put on a basket now, unless somebody requests one like that. And basically, there's a strap around the top that, you know, is pinned with a buckle here, and these are attached, and they go through the bottom of the basket on both sides, and then they come up. And you know, these are all made from scratch. You know, I buy a cow from Weaver Leather, the 9 to 11 ounce weight, beautiful tan stuff. And today, expensive stuff too. And I really like the look of that. You know, these are pads for your shoulders. They kind of mold to the shape of your shoulder after you've been wearing them a while. And you know, they just like anything. You know, the leather gets a patina on it also. And the more you wear them, the more they become you and part of you. And they're really, really nice. And I love the look of the basket with the full harness on it. That's really what I like the best. But, yep, had a lot of fun with them over the years. And of course I made mine with a big top on it. I wanted it open. I can throw 330s in there. I don't throw 330s in it. I slide them in there gently. But, yeah, it's a big, nice basket. And I'm kind of at a point in life where I've been a building contractor for years, and I'd kind of like to move towards retirement, and I have a lot of wonderful customers that it's very hard to say no to. I don't even want to, because you know, you build a relationship with these people, you love them. And but I do want to try to ease out of that. And what I'd like to kind of do in my retirement is, you know, there's so much to do to help others, and I'm really heavily involved in the church, and so, you know, that is more of my focus, and I want it to be more and more of my focus as I age. But this is something I can just do. I can make baskets, and I have a whole bunch of orders to fill, and I'd love to just do them at my leisure, make them up, get them to the people that wanted them, and then, you know, have the time to spend out in God's creation, hunting bucks and using my fly rod and catching some beautiful brook trout, and thanking God for the ability to do it. And share good times with good friends, and really life is about others and about a relationship with God, and everything else in life falls in place when you're there. So, yeah. As they say, I'm living the dream. Done.
Nice. Great work, Jim. Thank you.
Thank you. This has been a joy. Yes, you are. Yeah, I know. You're up on the leather couch when you're not supposed to be. Yeah.
She's not supposed to be. She's been there every single time I've ever been
Yeah,
here.
but she's got a cover that goes on the couch, and when company comes, Lori takes the cover off. Look at the mud all over there from her. She came out from outside and pounded up onto the thing. Yeah, you.